Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. It is such a pleasure to feel your presence again, to share that warm spark that unites us through every video and comment. Today we return to a tale that so many of you have requested, a tale woven from glances and whispers, from long shooting days and quiet confidences, from trust, respect, and an affection that the cameras could capture but never fully contain. Tonight, we're stepping into the soft light that surrounds Erkan and Hazal, tracing a connection that seemed to pause time and make even the most skeptical among us believe that some bonds are destined to outlast the final cut. If you love stories that breathe, that pull back the curtain and reveal how two people can create something true under the glare of spotlights, then settle in. And before we dive deep into the heart of this, if you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Join our family of keen observers and passionate fans. Your presence changes the energy here, and our next videos will be full of emotion, analysis, and the kind of details that make your heart race. Say their names and watch the reaction, Erkan and Hazal. They are instantly recognizable to audiences who cherish Turkish series, but beyond the carefully crafted lines and the choreography of scenes lies a connection that was always larger than plot. From the moment they stood across from one another, something intimate and unmistakable appeared. It hummed beneath their banter, it flickered in their pauses, and it exploded on screen in a way that made viewers lean forward and whisper to themselves, "It's real. It has to be." Adeniz and Koy didn't simply present a couple fighting for love, it became an emotional weather system. Secrets, misunderstandings, stubborn pride, uncontrollable fate, every storm they faced on screen felt like it arrived at your door. And Erkan and Hazal met each of those storms with performances that cut right into the core. A single look from him could turn a quiet scene into a breathless confession. A single tremor in her voice could collapse the distance between pain and forgiveness. They were magnetic in the rawest sense. The closer they got, the more you felt pulled in with them. People a world away rooted for them, cried for them, clung to them. But magic like that, the kind that keeps rippling long after the episode ends, is never only about the lines spoken. It's born in long hours and unglamorous work. Imagine their schedule during the height of those episodes. Rehearsals that devoured afternoons, repeated takes that tested patience, final scenes finished under a midnight sky. Imagine what it means to see each other at the start of exhaustion and at the end of triumph, to carry nerves together before a pivotal scene, to shake off a heavy day with a laugh that only the other understands. That shared ground created a rare trust. Somewhere along the way, the barrier between the characters and the people playing them dissolved just enough to let something real grow, a framework built from camaraderie and respect that began to guide every gesture and line. You could see it in how they listened to each other while acting. Even in the quietest beats, before a revelation, after a fight, their attention never wavered. His hand hovering, not touching, yet saying, "I'm here." Her inhale, caught in that place between fear and hope, as if the next word might save everything. They delivered the kind of intimacy that can't be faked because it isn't really planned, it's born from trust. And that trust made us believers. Away from the cameras, their bond found a different rhythm. There were stories from crew members about kindnesses that never made headlines, how she'd check in on him before a demanding day. How he'd offer quiet encouragement when she had to carry a heavy scene, how they celebrated not only the big moments but the small victories that keep a production moving. The way they looked out for one another, especially in the pressure cooker of a hit show, created a protective bubble where each could risk more, feel more, and therefore give more to the work. That's how a performance becomes unforgettable. As their profiles grew, interviews followed, and yet they managed to keep that protective bubble largely intact. In a world where a stray phrase can turn into a runaway rumor, they spoke with care, never coldly, never defensively, but with a measured warmth that made you lean closer. Hazal would praise Erkan's discipline and that unusual combination he brought to a role, a steady strength wrapped around a very honest vulnerability. Erkan would speak about Hazal's sensitivity, her precision, the way she could translate complex emotion into a quiet gesture that said everything. Those weren't just promotional sound bites, they sounded like the truth two coworkers share when they've been in the trenches together and come out stronger. Every so often, they would appear side by side at an event, a premiere, a reunion. Photographs would circulate and social media would flood with comments from fans who remembered the early days and the gravity of their on-screen love. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was recognition. People felt they were witnessing a rare kind of continuity, proof that what they had built didn't vanish the day the director called wrap on the final scene. Even their brief interactions online, an understated comment, a friendly like, could spark hours of conversation. How many pairings can do that years later? Part of what makes their story so compelling is the maturity with which they navigated attention. The spotlight can be merciless, and we know how easily narratives can be written for you. But rather than feed the fire or slam the door, they chose a path of grace. They acknowledged what they shared without allowing it to be defined by headlines. They moved forward with their lives and their work, each finding new challenges and new rhythms, without ever letting bitterness creep into the picture. No rivalry, no coded jabs, no petty echoes, only an enduring respect that was impossible to miss. Their careers unfolded with new projects, fresh characters, unfamiliar sets, and yet the ghost of that original connection did not become a burden, it became a foundation. It was there in the confidence with which they took risks, in the creative boldness that arrives when you've once been seen and supported so completely by a partner in front of the camera. And at the same time, they taught their audience a valuable lesson: you can move on to different chapters without tarnishing the earlier pages. Admiration does not have to be complicated. What they created together changed more than a set of ratings. Adini Sinkoi became a passport that crossed borders and language barriers. It offered viewers a mirror for their own longing, their own mistakes, their own stubborn hopes. People didn't just watch, they felt. And in that space, Erkan and Hazal became icons of a love that fights back, not with grand speeches but with everyday courage. They made endurance romantic again. They showed how tenderness can be powerful, how patience can tremble and still hold, how two people can carry their characters' burdens to a place of believable grace. If you've ever wondered why certain on-screen connections become legend while others fade, look at the consistency of their integrity. Fandoms can be intense, interpretations can be unfair, and yet they maintain dignity. They learned to separate what belonged to the world and what belonged to them. They offered gratitude but protected their inner lives. That balance, of generosity and boundary, is difficult even for seasoned veterans, and they handled it beautifully. The result is a rare legacy, affection that feels untainted by spectacle, admiration that does not require drama to stay alive. Ask the people who worked alongside them, and you'll hear about a set energized by good faith. Ask the viewers who followed each episode as if it were a heartbeat, and you'll hear about a couple who seemed to rewrite the rules of chemistry. Ask those who discovered the series years later, far from its original airing, and they'll tell you the same thing in different words: there is something in their gaze that doesn't age. That is what it means to become a reference point in pop culture. You become a shorthand. Mention their names, and people know you mean loyalty, softness tangled with steel, and a belief that love can be both fragile and unbreakable. Of course, the stories around them sometimes tilted toward fantasy. Rumors have a way of trying to turn your private sincerity into public spectacle. But Erkan and Hazal never weaponized their bond. They didn't flirt with scandal to keep themselves trending, they didn't perform closeness only when it could sell. Instead, they let the work speak loudly and their actions whisper with deeper force. Over time, the whispers turned into proof that requires no headline. Real connections endure because they're nurtured, not broadcast. What remains most moving is how they kept championing each other long after the credits rolled. In different interviews, on different stages, their words kept circling back to gratitude. He would acknowledge how she made space for him to find the quiet center of a scene. She would describe how his steadiness helped her take emotional risks without fear. Those acknowledgments allowed fans to see the scaffolding beneath the romance, the daily labor and shared daring that hold up every story we love. And that, my friends, is why this bond still resonates. It isn't trapped in the past, it echoes forward. When you see them today, carrying new roles and dreams, that early lesson is still there. That excellence blooms where respect is planted, that tenderness in a professional partnership can produce art that feels like memory. We don't need grand declarations to know when something real has touched the screen. We recognize it in how it lingers, how it revisits us without warning, how a single photo or a 10-second clip can make us ache in the best possible way. As we close this exploration, let's name what we've witnessed. With Adini Sinkoy, Erkan Merrick and Hazal Sabesai gave us a master class in presence, in listening, in emotional courage. They turned the grind of production into a crucible for trust. They demonstrated that popularity doesn't have to cost humility, that visibility doesn't negate privacy, and that a shared history can be both complete and open-ended. They are a reminder that when artists meet at the right time and treat each other with care, the result is bigger than a show. It becomes a shared chapter of the audience's life. Thank you for being here with me, for reliving this story with a full heart and bright eyes. Tell me in the comments what moment still visits you unannounced. Was it a line, a tear, a laugh? What do you think their partnership teaches about love, ambition, and grace under pressure? I read everything you share, and your insights turn each video into a conversation. If this journey moved you, tap that like button, send this to someone who understands what it means to be carried by a scene, and, of course, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets so you never miss our deep dives, our careful analyses, and the exclusive glimpses we prepare with love. Until the next story, I'm sending you a warm embrace. Take care, and we'll meet again very soon.